Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of The Curse, episode 8, Down and Dirty. I'm going to break my review into three parts. We're going to start with the main timeline story with Asher and Whitney, and then we're going to break it off when they break off in this episode and start with everything going on with Asher, and then we'll finish off with everything going on with Whitney. So, what happens at the start of this episode is we see that this whole idea that Whitney has of having every time someone steals from the jeans store, the worker just charges her credit card is just blowing up in her face. You're literally having rich teens in the area now stealing these jeans, not only just for themselves, but to just resell them, just making money off of this store. I love one of these teens says to the native worker, he's like, I wish I was rich. And she goes, you're not? He's like, not me, my parents, though. It just reminds you of a younger version of what you would imagine Whitney would be like growing up and that kind of thinking. But what happens as a result of all of this getting crazy now with the stealing is Fernando shows up with two men at Whit and Asher's doorstep with all of them carrying rifles. And he's freaking out on them. He's like, I thought you were here to clean stuff up. I don't need this. You're trying to get me in trouble or something. And this is just a complete different area they are now landed at with him, where if you think at the beginning of the show it opened with Fernando and his sick mother. It's very interesting how this scene goes about too, because Whit and Asher start talking to him like parents would to a child, where Whit is like, it's inappropriate for you to show up with guns, and he snaps. And Asher is so funny when he's trying to stick up for Whitney, and Asher's still in doing this. When Fernando asks if he can use their bathroom, Asher first looks at Whitney for what to say. He's always looking for Whitney to guide him what to do, and he goes to her when Fernando leaves, I was ready to take a bullet for you. And he just starts thinking about this cursing, and he's like, maybe this is all happening for a reason. But this is where Whitney's like, maybe we'll just start charging them rent. And Asher's like, they won't make it. And Whit says, we just need to get the show on air and it will grow organically from there. And this is where the music shifts to eerie music now. And Asher's like, what about Fernando? We promised him a job and his mom and everything. And this is where, for the first time in my opinion, we completely get the mask ripped off of Whitney. And it's terrifying, and it's such props to Emma Stone here in the scene. And it's also props to Nathan Fielder in this scene, keeping that clueless face on while Emma Stone is just going to town with this. She's teasing and mocking him for feeling bad about Fernando's mom. And she's like, oh, you're so sweet. Nice to meet you. Who's this? You care about people so much. You're such an angel. And then imitates Asher and how he spoke to Fernando. And he's like, quit it or there will be consequences, saying verbatim what he said to Fernando. Calling him out, saying, stop trying to act like you're this good person. Now, this is foreshadowing the conversation that Dougie has with them later in an episode in the car, where he says it must be so exhausting cosplaying as a good person. What is so crazy about this is that Asher isn't doing that. Asher isn't either, really. He's just really, like, they're calling him the village idiot. I really think Asher just doesn't know what he's doing half the time. So I don't think he's sitting there going, I want to be a good person now, I'm going to act like it either way or be a bad person. I just think he's so clueless half the time that he's actually trying to do the right thing at points, but it really just goes with what he's getting or not. Now, this will shift to Asher's interview, which I really want to jump into here with Dougie. And it's so great that they went from that scene with Whitney and Asher to Dougie asking him first what he loves about Whitney. And he says, she's the most selfless person I've ever met. Everything she does is so true and pure. To hear him say that right after that scene is incredible, how it contrasts who she is. And you see Dougie ask him if Whitney's a better person than him. And then you get to see the manipulation of Dougie, right? How he's painting his own little film in a show, and he's making Asher say certain things and restate them clearly, because he's clearly going to cut parts out and put them together in the edit of what he wants to show. And he's like, please fully state and say Whitney's a better person than me. And he says, what would your life be like without her? And he says, I'd have nothing. This is where Dougie nudges the camera person to bring the camera down to his trembling hands. So this is all going to be used in the kind of cut that he's going to use to basically humiliate Asher. And where it gets really messed up from Dougie's perspective is he is talking to Asher about tiling and how he gets his tiling done. And he's like, you don't get down and dirty, you hire people for that. But he's actually really just trying to trip him up and say, I hire people to get down and dirty for me, because he wants to use that exact quote to actually spin it like he was saying that about him being a cuck for his sexual relationships. And what's even more messed up about how predatory Dougie is this whole episode, we'll get to it with Nala, but here with Asher, because Asher's saying he's exhausted, he wants a break. Dougie does not care, and he knows because Asher's more exhausted, he's more vulnerable. And he keeps going. And he asks on camera about his prior relationship. Do you know if she is seeing anyone else right now? Does the idea of her seeing someone else excite you at all? And he's like, because I know that's kind of what you wanted all along, right? And he pushes it a step further and says, want to talk to me about how you might ask a girlfriend to have sex with another man while you watched? And this is a huge pause from Asher. And he's like, well, I'm never telling you anything again. So right there, he's admitting at some point he's told Dougie about this kink he has. And it makes sense because we think about that hysterical scene in episode 1 with him and Whitney having whatever you want to call it, where he's using a vibrator on Whitney and then she asked him to just take over and he didn't. So his real turn on is being someone who's watching. But this is important too because then it's going to make you theorize about the baby, right? Is it really Asher's baby? Did he watch Whitney have sex with somebody else? You're also wondering, knowing that Dougie knows this information and that he came on to Whitney in episode 1 and he also was trying to mess with the dating profiles with Asher to Whitney, that he also knows this is something that might be possible. And it makes sense that he'd want to do this because they really highlight with their relationship with Dougie and Asher of just an alpha male taking advantage of a cuck type guy that he can walk all over and he knows it. And the ultimate thing he'd probably fantasize about is having sex with Whitney in front of Asher. But Dougie backtracks here and says he's kidding in front of the crew. Now, Asher, who we know is not the brightest crayon in the box, is able to just move on for it because of that. But most people in that situation would never talk to Dougie again after that moment. And Dougie knows he can get away with it with Asher. To the point that he's manipulating Asher, that Asher's the one feeling guilt about the last time they talked and Dougie saying he never invites him out. So Asher actually was going to invite him out to dinner. And you'll see that Dougie's constantly bringing in the sex jokes now, and he's doing a very alpha thing and making him feel like a cuck more and more. Like, he just humiliated Asher on camera, asked something very personal in front of everybody, made it like it was a joke, and then gets him to take him out to dinner. And to the point where Asher will apologize to Dougie about not being a good friend, not taking care to him while they've been filming. And then he even brings up, because this is going to remind you subconsciously about the bullying that Dougie, we learned, did to Asher. He says, remember when I was homesick and you guys would include me in all of your pranks? That's you, that's your instinct. Like, complimenting this, but it's actually him not getting, they were bullying him. So this is where you see Dougie's reaction, where he's talking about the waiter. He's trying to change the subject just to make things a little easier for him in his plan of screwing Asher completely. He doesn't want it to feel like Asher's actually being a good guy at all in his head. Now, Dougie will order a chicken to mess with Asher, and this will trigger Asher because quickly he asks, so that was you in the fire station. He wants peace of mind. He wants to know that this curse isn't real. But we still don't know who that chicken was from in the fire station. But you see that Asher doesn't trust Dougie, rightfully so, because he has a problem with drinking and driving. But Dougie's like, no, I'm gonna get a Coke, you keep drinking. But of course, when Dougie's leaving, he asks for more rum and to put it in the Coke secretly. And when Asher tells Dougie at dinner about the broken smoke alarm text, that will light a spark in Dougie's head. There's a plan going on in his head. And this is where we learn more about Dougie and him now actually curious about the curse and wanting to ask Nala. He's coming up with this master plan. And he even denies, though, so Asher doesn't catch on, and says he doesn't believe in curses. And Asher's like, well, you told me you did. And about how he's saying the curse was responsible for his wife's death. And we'll see again Dougie, right? Just being really strange with Asher. He's telling the cashier Asher wants the gay porn. And then he shows him in the car the pictures of the big penises. And he's like, I'd rather have what you have than this. And he's like really messing with Asher's head now. It's just really uncomfortable. And then he reveals his plan to Asher. He's like, let's see the girl chicken curse me, because they have the chicken in the car. So now they can see if the chicken will disappear or not. Now we get Asher rapping here. This is really one for the Nathan Fielder fans to see him doing this. It was just one of those moments you just laugh at, like, you can't believe it's happening. We got this scene. But the eerie music kicks back up after this moment, and this is when they get to Nala's. And you see Asher's telling Dougie, like, you know, she's probably asleep. Let's just change the batteries in the smoke alarm and leave. And Dougie's like, she's not asleep. She's sitting there watching TV. And Asher's like, that's the other one. And Asher's like, You gonna go into her bedroom? Come on, Dougie. Come on. Like, that's insane. But of course he is. He goes so far to make up he has extra 9 volts in his pocket. Now, Asher will go along with this and that they're going to plan to knock out all the smoke alarms and fake like they're doing that so he can get in the bedroom with Nala. And this is his very cuck personality in Asher. And it makes me think of the scene where we see on footage he was with the casino owner, with the gamblers, that this is what Asher does. There's an intention there that he doesn't want something to happen, but he, at the end of the day, falls to it and will follow someone else's choice. He does it with his wife all the time, and he does it with Dougie. And there's also a part of it, too, when someone goes, well, why is Asher doing this if he really doesn't want to? He also deep down wants to know if this curse is real or not. So that's part of it as well, and to see if the chicken will actually still be there. So Dougie asks Nala to curse him for $20, and he's like, I need this. And then he starts crying. He's like, please, I can't keep doing this. So this is a guy who is not over what happened with his wife, and he takes no responsibility for his own actions. And he just is taking advantage of this little girl in her bedroom. What I love about the writing in this scene, he brings up the story about the boy who cried wolf to Nala, and that 1% of the time it's true in someone who cries wolf. What's crazy about that line, setting up the whole scene in general and how it connects, is that Nala is the one who will cry wolf for her dad, but she's the 1% who's telling the truth that there is a problem here. But unfortunately, like children will do in these kind of situations, she doesn't tell her father the full story, and he'll look at it like a situation with Nala that's a boy who cried wolf, when it's not, when Dougie is a wolf. Now, of course, when they go to the car, the first thing Asher does is check if the chicken's there. He's like, it's still here. And Dougie's like, she didn't do it. She didn't do the curse. And Asher's like, I can't believe you made me do that. And he goes, F off. You really think I can make you do something you don't want to do? Yes. And we know this about Asher. And we know, that, again, like I said, it happens with Whitney as well. And Asher brings up he wanted to leave multiple times. And Dougie brings up how he went along with the Kleenex. He could have stopped at that moment. He's like, I know you. That was you in there. And he says that line I brought up, does this get exhausting cosplaying as a good man? This is very similar again to the Whitney scene earlier on, where she was mocking him for acting like a good person, caring about Fernando's parents. I think this episode really turns the show on its head, because you were already starting to feel last episode more sympathy for Asher, and you really feel it here. I think a lot of it also is a result of how awful and worse Dougie and Whitney have looked the past weeks, but how they take advantage of someone. There's a theme going on in the show, I believe, that is showing you people who take advantage of people who aren't that smart and aren't that bright and manipulate them, and that they could say and justify it in a way that, like, well, you were in on it too. You're not a good person either. But I don't think that's the case with Asher. I think we're seeing more and more. It actually is like, no, he doesn't get it a lot of the time, and that he is just influenced by other people so much, and it's making him do poor decisions. And I think how people who are smarter and have higher IQs in life need to realize that with people like that, and that they're manipulating them and can take advantage of that, and it's not the right thing to do. I think that's a big message of this show. Because I think from the beginning of this show, you're assuming Asher's this terrible person, what he's doing, but as it goes on, you kind of start to see another side to that. I also am starting to think that when Nala originally cursed Asher, she did not curse a chicken curse. I think it was something way worse, and that's why in the episode where his hand starts to bleed and she then apologizes to him and says, I'm sorry, and he's like, sorry for what? I think that was her way of saying she's sorry about the original curse she put on him. And I think Nala actually likes him a little bit. Now, Asher gets the best dig of this show, period. He's like, you're one to talk, when Dougie's basically calling him not a good person. And Dougie goes, what's that supposed to mean? He's like, I don't know. Ask your wife. This is how you nail Dougie and like hit his most sensitive spot. I was like, holy wow, when that happened. I couldn't believe it. I just want to say too, I love the electronic sounds they're doing during all this, especially in the awkward ride home. And you saw Dougie was going to punch him when he was getting out of the car, and then he stops himself like last second. He says it was a fly. And of course, again, he can get away with that to someone like Asher, who's so oblivious. And then he says, I curse you, to Asher. But I'm going to give credit to someone on Reddit who thought of this different way, where what's crazy about Dougie doing that is he's actually cursing himself in the reflection of the home. So that's going to be interesting if you look at it that way. So this was my favorite whole section of the show so far, is everything that went on since the interview starts with Asher and Dougie. And it's hitting all great things about good writing, with really focusing on good relationships, meaning interesting relationships between characters, and that's Asher and Dougie's relationship, going back to their bullying, going back to their relationships with Whit, but also this manipulation being had between Dougie and Asher and how he's manipulating someone like Asher to do what he wants. And also, good characters are written well that lie, and Dougie is a classic case of that, and so is Whitney, and you're realizing Asher isn't. So it's making it very interesting studying these type of characters and how they operate together and how they affect each other. Now, let's go to everything with Whitney. So it gets worse and worse for Whitney each episode. Like, she looks worse every episode, and this is the one I just was, like, really blown away by Emma Stone's performance, and it's beating a dead horse saying this, but no, it's true. Like, this is just unbelievable how well she's doing this. But you see more and more her mask come off this episode. And you see that Kara's on the phone with Whit at this diner, and we meet her friend Brett, who really steals a lot of these scenes. And you're also seeing how Kara's operating in a paid friendship by Whit, and that the only reason she's dealing with her is she's on the books now. And you see Brett makes a joke like, maybe she will pay me for some of my wisdom too. And we'll see he's gonna jump into character now around Whit, that she's so gullible and buying the whole time. And a huge thing about Whit's character is she does not acknowledge Brett when she first sits down. Says hi to Karen's about to order. She does not take interest in Brett until she sees the character he puts on that she can literally then take. His turkey, which is a theme we're going to get to. But that is a huge no-no to me. The way Whitney walked in there and acknowledged Brett, that's like, for me personally with people, that's my number one pet peeve is that. And when someone asks someone else, you know, how have you been? What are you up to? And they don't ask you back. That's another thing I just can't stand. And Whitney just comes off that way as that type of person. And she goes on and on about how she's spinning it as what's going on with the stealing in the jeans as an urban art piece to Kara. It is so cringe watching this. And then she's saying the reason she wants to come along with Kara going to this collector's house is she has no real footage on the show of my life outside of Asher, but that's the thing. She doesn't have a life outside of Asher. She has to manufacture it. And it's also interesting when she talks about this collector's event, and again, Kara would not have her come to something like this. She's only doing it again because now she's getting paid by Whitney. But it is interesting that Whitney had brought up this event to Dougie and wanted him to come film it. But you see, Dougie sends his bare bones crew to something that would show Whitney's life outside of Asher, which clearly Dougie has no interest in painting her that way of this like nice life and fun, cool life she has. He doesn't care. He sends one guy with a camera that's less quality and that has a shotgun mic on it, not a real team to be there. If he had interest immediately, Dougie would have sent a bunch of people. Now, Kara explains to Brett the reason she's going to this collector Vivi's house is she says sometimes you have to put in FaceTime with people you don't like because they might buy your art. She says this in front of Whitney, which is literally how her relationship started with Whitney. And Whitney does not read that one. And Whit, of course, invites Brett now because now, again, he's offering something for her. And you see I'm talking about this character of Whit showing herself more and more when she gets to this beautiful house that this millionaire collector has, Vivi. When Vivi and Kara walk in, she totally stops listening to Majori about her cookies. Like, couldn't be interested at all. And it gets weird because Vivi has this young woman show up and he kind of clings on to her. And we also learn he's a military contractor. So this is where Whitney's like telling the camera guy, don't film any of the long-haired man. Now, I absolutely love the electronic keys that are playing when she's looking around the house in the background. It's a very Tim and Eric type of music, and I think it fits, especially in moments when she sees all these older rich people hanging out, and she's like, oh, what do you do? And he's like, I work in private security, and she's like, awesome. Like, it's just so silly and boring. And she finds Brett, and he's still playing up this character, and it's so funny that her face is so interested. And then she says to him on camera, it's always so good seeing you, and he dies laughing at this, one, because he's doing this character and she's falling for it, but also because of for her to say that is insane. He literally just met her at a diner. Now, the strangest scene in the show, I mean, I don't know what the hell is going on here, but Whit meets this very strange man who tells her about an elevator in the house. Now, it's a weird joke because she takes her into this room and it's just him and her, but it's not an elevator. And then he says to her at one point, there's a lot of things we might do that might surprise you. And he says rape. He clearly says this, but what's interesting, there's no subtitles here, so they want to keep it a little ambiguous. And then she says, excuse me, and he says grape and hands her a grape. Very weird. I don't think this scene is just there to be there. So I think this is hinting at something even more sinister going on behind the scenes of this story that we're probably going to be revealed in a twist probably next week because it's already getting to the second to last episode. So it's very weird, and I'd love to hear your guys' reading on this scene and theories. Now, another amazing scene is her filming this artificial conversation with her and Kara. What must drive Kara nuts and really got her to a breaking point here with Whitney is Whitney literally told her in the diner she was not going to have to act, But that's exactly what she's having to do here. Now, what's also interesting is, like they showed in the previously on, Whitney is getting Kara to say things she's always wanted her to say that kind of stung her. Like, she wants Kara to say her homes are artistic because she read earlier on at the dinner scene early in the season that Kara didn't think her homes were artistic, and then wants her to say why she loves having her work in her homes and how it's a collaborative effort. These are things she clearly told Whitney she does not want to be viewed as. So she's kind of getting her digs in a weird way and taking fully advantage of Kara, and she knows it. But she sets herself up for Kara to get her back. And this is where I feel like it parallels well to the scene with Asher and Dougie, where Dougie's manipulating Asher the whole episode, and then Asher gets that big dig in, and I think that kind of happens here with Kara clearly towards Whitney, who's manipulating her per usual. So the great moment set up with Whitney saying, were we supposed to eat the turkey, talking about the TP performance? And she explains how it works, and she's like, the slicing of the meat is me giving pieces of myself to people, whether I want to or not. As a Native person, that is what you're doing every day, just slicing pieces off yourself, and it's exhausting. So we saw that she was always screaming either way if they took the turkey or not. And I think that's just showing, like, what she's explaining is that you're always going to be giving pieces of yourself to other people. It's whether they take it or not, but you're still going through that pain as this Native person. But she says an important line is like, whether people choose to eat it is totally up to them, and you eat it. So that is Whitney in a nutshell. And now I'm seeing, looking back, we did not see Asher and his reaction to the turkey. So I think that was totally on purpose now for us to think about that. And I don't think now, knowing who Asher is, and we learn more and more about him, that he did take the turkey. I don't think he did. And it's that difference between him and Whitney at the end of the day that I think makes me feel more sympathetic towards an Asher type person. And you see in this moment that Whitney got it. Like, she clearly got it, cuts the camera. He even offers more time, and she's done. She's done with it. And she's driving off in her car just like Dougie's driving off in his car. Like, they've been hits with some truth serum that they totally deserved, and they don't like it. These aren't good people. These aren't people that self-reflect on that and think they should be better. And it's amazing they ended on Kara leaving out in the road for the dumpsters this mini golf statue that Whitney gave her, that she was trying to bond with her over and joke about. It is such a great symbolic visual of that statue being destroyed and cutting from Kara destroying Whitney in what she just said to her face. So this one for me is the best of the show, past the premiere, which I loved. I'm giving this one a 9.7. It's so impressive. This was directed by Nathan Fielder and brilliantly written by Benny Safdie and Nathan Fielder. And really, after Whitney started turning on Asher is where we're starting to get the goods, and I feel like it hasn't looked back since, and it's getting better and better now. And honestly, it might sound crazy, but I almost thought, like, even if they stopped there, I was very satisfied. Like, it felt like an ending in a way, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes and kind of unravel some more mysteries here. Like, you think about the curse, you think about what could be happening with that vase that Dougie has there in the field. That's the thing I keep thinking about, and everything with Nala at the end of the day, if the curse is real or not. So I'd love to hear your guys' theories on all of this and get more people talking about the show in general, which I think they will over time. And Emma Stone having a big year with Poor Things, I just hope it's tough. It's on Paramount and Showtime, getting less exposure that way. And I think a lot of people tuned out from how slow the first couple episodes were. But I hope they come back and see you getting payoff and reward in these people. That's why I've stuck with it, because I saw other people were dropping, reviewing it even because they were so bored by it. But I just kept faith in who was behind it. And I'm a big believer in Nathan Fielder. So I feel like now we're getting that payoff for trusting someone like that. But I'm going to give this one a 9.7. Let me know your thought down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please sub. It helps me in so many ways you have no idea. And I'll see you next time.